In the South, haying conditions are a little different. Equipment is different, and it takes a little bit of expertise. Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, sponsored by Vermeer, your trusted source in hay and forage equipment. Today I'm joined by Ernie Cooper. Ernie's a territorial sales manager for ACI distributors in Florida and Georgia. He deals in a variety of equipment, but I'll let him tell you more about that. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, John. Yeah, I work for ACI distributors, and we actually sell, I think it's roughly 23 different lines of equipment. Kind of like to say that we handle everything but the tractor, and we leave the tractor to the dealerships to handle. We have a lot of hay equipment, a lot of dirt moving equipment, several sprayers. Like I said, pretty much everything, anything you want farming other than the tractor we have. Tube line bale wrappers, tube line nitro spreaders, HLA loader attachments, and horse header carts, McHale balers, Cashel bale moving equipment, and bale slicers, just to list a few others. Ferry, boom mowers, the industrial balers from Go Wheel, some of the hemp guys that are baling hemp, bale processors, highline bale processors, Ideal post pounders, Jacto sprayers, NDE mixers, Otovos wagons, landscaping equipment, and all from Reist. RTP is one of our big products with wildlife food plot drills, Citrix hay equipment, Twin Star rakes, Western Door front end loaders. Pretty much anything you can come up with, we have. We like to be the one-stop shop for all the dealer short lines, as we call it. John, I'd like to kind of explain to you what a distributor's role is. The equipment comes straight from the factory, straight to the dealership. And with a lot of companies, that is the case, and that is true. Deere, when you order a tractor, Deere sends it to the Deere dealer. But with a distributorship, basically what we do is we are the marketing arm for that product. So if a company doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure in the U.S., he can go through a distributor, and we handle the marketing of that product for them. We also handle basically all the warranty claims and all the service issues, and we are actively acting as the factory here in the country, I guess is the easiest way to kind of simplify things and explain what we do. Basically, we handle all the marketing and all the warranty, all the service and all that for McHale here in the U.S. Then it breaks down into, we don't cover it all over the U.S. We have ACI Distributors has a territory within the United States that we cover, which is predominantly, the Southeast is what we cover for McHale. And then different product lines, we handle different areas for different product lines. For instance, like Danuser is one of our main product lines, but we don't necessarily handle the marketing for Danuser in Georgia and Florida. I don't have that territory, so I don't sell Danuser. That's when you talk to a McHale rep on Facebook or whatever, you might be talking to a rep that doesn't cover your area and a company that doesn't cover your area.
I'm interested in this marketing component. You do the regional marketing advertising coordination for the companies.
What I do for, my job being Georgia, Florida, and a little corner of Alabama there, I call on the dealers and I handle, if they have a sales call that they need to make, I'll go out, help the dealer. Biggest part of my job is teaching the dealers, training the dealers, doing sales training with the sales staff at the dealerships. We also have service guys that come in and do service training at those dealerships within those areas.
And you facilitate that service training too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. We spend, usually almost every manufacturer, we end up visiting factories, and most of them all have training at least, every other year, if not every year, where we have to go to the factory and do training.
You said you dealt with some European lines. Does that mean you've had some nice European trips?
We've been to, I've been to Europe a few times. One of our favorite trips over there is for the Agritechnica Farm Show. If you've never been to Agritechnica, that's one of the things that everybody should put on their bucket list. It's far exceeds anything I've ever seen here in the U.S. It's just incredible. I think they have like 27 buildings of equipment, indoor farm show. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Some of the booths factories spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building them. One thing I like to tell people, just don't understand just how amazing it is. One of the coolest things I saw at the last one was JCB actually had a log cabin built in their booth.
Oh, jeez.
It's just insane what's there. I mean, and that's one of our main things. We like to go to Agritechnica and see all the new equipment, see the stuff that we don't necessarily see here in the U.S. We go to that show basically to find equipment to bring to the U.S. to improve the products we have here. You know, we go to find things that we don't have availability here of in the U.S., but we can use. And one of the biggest things, you know, one of our biggest markets is haylage and doing wet hay. And obviously Europe, because their climate, Ireland and that area, have a lot more. Number one, they have a lot more experience with haylage because they've been doing it a lot longer. Yeah. And their environment is even more conducive to haylage. So their equipment is more specified for haylage, whereas here in the U.S., most of our hay equipment is focused around dry hay because we've been doing dry hay forever here. Well, you know, most of Europe, there's such a focus on wet hay that their equipment is usually leaps and bounds ahead of where we're at here in the U.S. So it's usually a little bit more advanced technology-wise and R&D-wise, for that matter.
What's the most interesting thing that you've seen in your travels in Europe and maybe just going to Agritechnica?
The most impressive thing equipment-wise is all the potato, which here in the Southeast we don't do a lot of potatoes. The potato harvesting equipment at Agritechnica, there was one whole building and nothing but potato harvesting. And just some of the technology in that was just unbelievable.
Now, I'm from Washington State, and Idaho's not too far away. So
you know a lot more about potato farming than I do.
The largest potato-producing county in the country is only about an hour and a half from here. I'd love to get your thoughts on the scale differences in equipment and between industries. Maybe comparing and contrasting a big old John Deere combine against a Grimmy potato harvester and maybe then compare that to hay equipment.
I think that's one thing that we've done a lot of here lately with McHale. We've gotten a lot more experience in using a high-end baler specifically that's built to handle haylage. So by focusing on being able to bale being able to bale wet hay, you have the ability to bale high volume at high speed. That's allowed us to bring that into the U.S. You've got heavier bearings, heavier chain, you know, all those things that allow higher technology equipment, not necessarily from a computer standpoint, but just from a heavier machine that does the job at a higher rate, higher volume, higher speed than what we're accustomed to here in the U.S.
You mentioned a couple of things in there, bigger, heavier bearings, heavier chain. Is that what makes a piece of equipment good or bad?
Not necessarily, but, you know, most of the time when you go, you know, heavier bearings, when you're putting a 2,000 to 2,500 pound roll, and sometimes even higher than that, you don't use the same equipment to do a 4,000 pound job that you do to do a 1,000 pound job. By doing those things, you seem to have a lot less breakdown, a lot less wear and tear. We've got balers out in Europe running 90 to 100,000 bales. I've seen them in the shop. They're in there going through them, getting them ready to go back to the field for the next season. By doing those upgrades and doing those advancements, you end up getting a lot higher quality, longer longevity piece of equipment.
I like asking the hard questions around equipment in particular. Talking about implements, it's a little bit less of an issue, but how do you view technology in regards to farming equipment?
It's a necessity, as you know, labor is getting harder and harder to find, and quality labor is even harder to find than that. So anytime that you can become more advanced and more efficient is going to be an advantage to you.
And your thoughts on having to have a computer program to fix stuff?
You know, that's kind of funny. And I guess, you know, when you get into the tractor end of deals, you know, you have to, everybody complains about having to plug them up to tell you what's wrong with them. That's one good thing I like about a lot of the European design of balers. You know, the McHale baler, looks very complicated, but it's actually very, very simple. And, all the computer system is right there in that monitor. So it's not very complicated at all. Computers are a way of life, and you got to stay with the times. So ISOBUS and that kind of thing is coming, and, we will be prepared for it.
Is there anything in that regard that you see coming down the pipe that you're excited about?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. For instance, with McHale, anytime they get new advancements, they usually try to test it in Europe before they send it all over the world. They'll run it there for a couple of years, and I know that there are some things coming from ISOBUS controls, and I actually think they released ISOBUS on the fusion balers in Europe already, so we should be seeing those balers. The ISOBUS compatible balers are coming. Should be here, I would think within the next couple of years at the latest.
Take me through what that does for a producer. What's the value add in those ISOBUS computer connections?
Well, it basically saves a lot on it makes the baler more efficient. It will allow the baler tells everything what to do. The tractor stops on its own. The baler dumps the bale on its own. Basically got an operator up there that's overseeing the operation because the baler is able to do pretty much everything on its own.
Let's take a break there and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
I'm Danny Wan, and I switched to the Vermeer 604R because I believe this baler is built to last. I bale about 4,000 bales a year, and I think as much money you give for a baler, if they need to bale 4,000 bales a year, even if it's for 10 years, they need to get it done. The day I ran it, we absolutely had no issues at all. It fired up, and I bailed like some guy. It just bailed all day long.
Hear the full story at makinghay.com/haykings.
What about automation? What you just said there, that kind of lends itself towards not having an operator.
Well, more and more things. Another product line that we cover is Jocto, and Jocto now has a completely auto-driven sprayer that's been released. Those things are getting more and more important. Like I said, as labor gets harder and harder to find, you've got to become able to do it with less and less manpower. The other thing is, computers are able to fine-tune things and cut on, cut off, save money as far as spraying overlapping chemicals. And anytime you get the automation in there, you get the ability to really fine-tune your efficiency. And that's the biggest thing. But the autonomous sprayers and that kind of thing are here, and we're going to get more and more in that direction.
What skill sets do producers need to be able to function in that environment going forward? Maybe somebody just coming out of high school right now looking at college choices.
When it comes to coding and computer programming and that kind of thing, when you think of farming, you don't really think of those things, but we're becoming more and more in that realm. There's going to be some great opportunities for young minds. I don't mind telling you, my 15-year-old son can do a lot more things with an iPhone than I'm capable of. So the next generation coming on, even though we're not necessarily plowing the dirt like we used to, the computer age, there's plenty of opportunity there. And I really feel like, moving forward in the future, the whole autonomous operating tractors and the computer technology and that is where it's at. That's where it's going to be heading more and more, especially with the increased minimum wage. It's even more apparent that we're going to need more autonomous, more ability to be efficient on our own.
The economist in me says, well, there's a trade-off between labor and capital, between the amount of money that you spend on equipment and the amount of money that you spend on labor.
There is a point of return on your investment there at some point, isn't there?
Sure is.
Well, and that's where the efficiency of creating these things, where, it is expensive, and technology is always going to be expensive. Chemical prices and fertilizer prices certainly aren't going down. So as you become more and more efficient, and environmentally speaking, if you can cut down on the amount of chemicals sprayed, there's just so many advantages to computerized systems and more autonomous systems that can maintain those things better accuracy than humans. It's a benefit to everybody.
You've been out and interacted with a lot of customers. Do you have any favorite customer stories?
That's one thing that I'm blessed with in my my part of the world is we really have some really good guys. I've developed friendships with a lot of customers across, Georgia and Florida. I laughed the other day. I said, I think I live in North Georgia, but I think I've got more friends in South Florida than I do at home. Could be because I spend more time down there than I do at home. But it's amazing. One of my favorite things about my job is being able to interact with the huge cow-calf operations in South Florida.
Sure.
I've got several customers down there, and one thing people don't know is Florida has got a huge number of, most people think of Florida, they think of Disney. They don't realize that I think I counted it up a couple of weeks back. I think 7 or 8 of the top 25 cow-calf operations in the country are all in Florida. 3 of those 7 are actually in South Florida within 1 or 2 counties of each other.
Okay.
And in the job I'm in, I've been on almost every one of those farms, been involved with a lot of their farming operations, and that's my favorite part of this job is I learn something every day. I thought I was a cow man until I started spending time in South Florida and realized that those boys down there know a whole heap more about cattle than I do. And I've run cattle all my life and hay farmed all my life. We all laugh, and one of the big advantages I have is I've spent so much time doing a lot of the R&D and whatnot and running demos and working with farmers in South Florida that I've learned the crop. And it's amazing to me the differences in the crop. When you get south of I-4 in Florida, it's a total different world down there. People have no idea. And I'll be honest with you, if you'd have told me 7 years ago before I went to work with ACI and started spending a lot of time in South Florida, if you told me there was a crop in the United States that I could bale 45, 50 rolls the acre off of, I'd have said you're crazy. But I've done it. I've seen it done quite a bit. Hermathia is an amazing crop.
What was the name of that crop?
Hermathia.
Hermathia.
It's a tropical grass that grows, basically it can grow and stand in water.
Oh, okay.
And I've seen it so thick that you have to run a mower through it 3 times just to get it down to the ground.
Oh, jeez.
and the tractor will sit up on top of it. The tractor, when you're cutting it, will sit up on top of it, and it's almost like it's floating because it won't even be getting to the ground. Won't be getting any traction on the ground because it's just walking on top of this storage.
Like driving on a silage pile.
Yes. Very similar, actually. You step out of the tractor, and it's long runners. So when you're baling the windrow, you can look in front of the tractor and see it dragging crop to the baler.
You're talking rolls per acre. That hurts my head a little bit. I think in tons. What kind of dry tonnage are we talking about?
To dry bale it, I think most of them it'll take up to 2 weeks to dry bale it.
There's no dry hay in that situation.
Oh,
what kind of dry matter tonnage per acre are we talking about?
I don't know. I'd have to do the figures on it. They do dry hay some down there. Actually, there's quite a bit of it baled for dry hay. I won't say the quality is all that great,
right?
But it's extremely high in sugar, so it really does ensile well. The problem with the crop is when it's baled at the right maturity, it'll still have a high yield. But when you get to 35, 40 rolls the acre, it's an over mature crop. So what happens is it's a different mentality in that part of the world, because whereas most of the time, even where I live in North Georgia, we bale hay through the summer. May, June, July, August. That's our hay time. Well, in June, July, August in South Florida, it's flooded. There you can't get in the fields. So that grass just sits there and grows and grows and grows. Well, when it finally dries up enough for you to get in the field to bale, well, guess what? It's thick. Now, the good part about it is you can actually take that, and there is some nutritional value to it, even though it's over mature. It's so high in sugar, it will ensile and make a decent feedable crop. Now, obviously it's not going to be the quality of like alfalfa and all in your part of the world and all, but when you're in South Florida and it never freezes, you only feed hay about a month of the year anyway, and you only feed that when it actually has a bad winter. So a lot of their crop it's not necessary to have that high feed quality. You just need a fiber source and something to mix with your commodities to get where you want to be for your ration. So it's a trade-off.
That's the idea that makes the large cattle ranches in Florida make sense, is that generally speaking, it doesn't freeze. The grass grows year-round.
Yeah, we were talking about the hay market and hay sales and hay equipment sales and this and that. And that's one of the things that come up. Well, if we'd have a bad winter down there, the market would increase. But they really had very mild winters for the last 5-6 years and haven't had a lot of freeze. Now, I also know they called the other day and said that they had a pretty hard frost down there for the first time in a long, long time this past week. So they don't really have to feed a lot. And you don't have to worry about quality of hay too much when you're only having to feed for a month. You just got to get something to feed, fill her gut to get her by until the grass gets back green again.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I see on Facebook, and obviously the way we do hay in the Southeast is a lot different than the way you guys might do hay out west. But it's different strategies for different areas, and it's hard to believe. It's hard to understand that when you're in different parts of the world, different strategies work. Just because you don't bale hay that way doesn't mean it's not the right way. It's just not the right way for your area.
Right.
I baled hay all my life. That's all my family's ever done. When I went to South Florida, I got an education on we do things differently, and this is why.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to test hydraulics, send it to South Florida and let it run in South Florida heat and South Florida sand and South Florida dust. You will absolutely find out where your weak points are.
I suspect that's on the loop of design engineers somewhere along the way. Maybe some Imperial Valley, maybe some South Florida. Quite the range of conditions for sure. You mentioned that all you've ever done is make hay. Tell me about growing up and the farming operation that you run now.
My family, we started baling hay when I guess I was elementary school, and we had cows, and we were actually using my grandfather's equipment to bale hay for our cows, and it was a old 24T baler and a sickle bar mower that doesn't go very far very fast. Early on, figured out that we really needed to get some better equipment in order to be able to afford better equipment. We had to get more hay to bale. So we started custom baling and baling a lot of wheat straw and different custom jobs and different custom operations to basically pay for our equipment to bale hay for our own cattle. And it wasn't long before the hay end of it started being a lot more profitable than the cattle end of it. And before long, we were selling straw to Home Depot and Lowe's. And one point in time before my dad retired, we were baling roughly around 500,000 bales a year of wheat straw. We did a lot of unrolling. We'd round bale it during the straw season just to get it off the field because they had to plant back so quick we couldn't square bale it fast enough to get it off the field. So we would round bale it, bring it back in, and unroll it through the year, unroll it into square bales over tractor trailers, and out it went. And then as time went on, we just got bigger and bigger and bigger because we kept wanting more and more equipment, I guess. I decided to go off to the university, and I really actually thought I wanted to be an ag teacher. So I got a degree in animal science and ag education, and I found out real quick that the teacher's salary didn't pay for the toys I wanted. Started looking into my other love was sales. I've just always been real focused on sales, and I started moving that direction, and I was actually diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease lymphoma, and I couldn't do some of the things I was doing. And a friend of mine owned a truck dealership, a car dealership, and so I went to selling cars to get sales training, and then from there ended up in the position I'm in now. My family farm, we all hay and cattle. That's all we doing.
You mentioned Freeman balers. Freeman balers are made near Portland, Oregon, and they're pretty common in the West. They're not so common in the East. Can you tell me about your experience with those?
I laughed when you and I were talking about it. I said which obviously, McHale, I'm very familiar with them. The Freeman baler was to square baling what the McHale baler was to round baling. It's a baler that's built for high volume, high capacity, and high speed. It's built to take the beating of a commercial duty operation. Mm-hmm. There's never been a dealer network. I guess Freeman really ought to look to doing a distributorship for the Southeast, and maybe they could have marketed more in this area. because it's just one of those balers. It's a superior product because it's just built heavier. It's built to last. It's built to take the abuse of a high volume, high speed operation.
My observation, I've run several different brands of balers. Freeman just has more metal to it. I don't know that.
Absolutely.
I don't know
look
that
at
there's.
The flywheel on that baler is just insane compared to everybody else.
Oh yeah, I mean it's 3 or 4 times the size of any
ridiculous.
competitor. Yeah, very different product for sure.
Well, and that's the type of product, and that's one thing I love about ACI. I love about working for them. When we take on a product line, usually, it's the top of the class, and that's really the materials that we focus on. That's what we look for is the ones that can come in and dominate the area or bring something to the table that nobody else brings, something that sets them aside. People don't understand, but it doesn't do us any good if I'm constantly working on a piece of equipment or handling warranty claims on a piece of equipment. That's time that I can't be selling. I don't want to sell a piece of equipment that doesn't work and doesn't perform at the standard everybody wants, because the more trouble we have with that equipment, the more time I'm away from selling, and obviously I get paid on the amount of equipment I sell. So we want heavy duty equipment. We want to sell equipment that sets itself above everybody else's standard. That's one thing I love about McHale. It really doesn't matter what the conditions are, what's happening that day, what went on. When I go to do a field day and we're competing against other brands of balers, I guess one of my big stories is I had a guy just below Augusta, Georgia, that called him on a demo. And we went out there to do a demo with a dealer. And we got the baler hooked up, got everything hooked up and ready to go to the field. And about the time we got ready to go to the field, it just came a downpour of rain. And the guy was just disappointed. He said, man, I just hate that. I was looking forward to baling hay. And I laughed and I told him, I said, well, we can go bale hay if you want to. It won't be very good quality when we're done, but if you want to go bale hay, we'll go bale hay. And he laughed. He thought I was kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. If you want to go bale hay, we'll go bale hay. He said, well, I just cut that 3 or 4 acre lot there. It's actually my pasture, but it was pretty heavy standing grass. And I just wanted something to get, to be able to bale to see. I don't care. I'm not going to do anything with it. It's not for me to feed. It's to throw away. Do you really mean that you'll go out there and bale that? Like, sure, let's go. Let's see what it'll do. And we baled that hay in the pouring rain in the middle of a rainstorm. I mean, literally, when we dumped bales out, and you dump the bale out of the chamber, there was water seeping out of the side of the bale, and there would be a puddle of water underneath the bale where it was the bale was squeezing the water out on the ground, and we were just baling like mad. People were pulling off side the road, watching. It was and that's the goal. That's what you want. You want to go, and we've got several products that do that people pull off side the road and watch, because it's going to perform at a higher level. It's just, it doesn't matter what the conditions are. It doesn't matter what happened that day. We can bail. We will bail when nobody else will. And it's fun going to a demo or a field day when you know that no matter what happens, we'll be successful. No matter what happens, we can do what we want to do, and it's just fun. It's exciting.
That's a pretty good story. I don't know that I've ever just gone ahead and baled hay in the rain like that.
Truthfully, all jokes aside, I think it actually bales a little bit better when it's raining like that, because it actually cleans it up and keeps everything good and clean. It actually does a better job.
Oh, really?
It's great. Yeah, it's really phenomenal the way the dual drives on that baler works. If the belts start to slip, the second drive catches it. So with fixed chambered baler, everybody wants fixed chambered balers for wet hay, and I agree. Fixed chambered baler is great for wet hay, and McHale makes a fixed chambered baler. And they're, if you're doing predominantly wet hay, they're great. What I like about the variable chamber balers from McHale, the glory of the fixed chamber is you don't have the belts. You don't have to worry about the belt slippage. Well, with the McHale, we don't have belt slippage. You'll see some when somebody feeds a slug in from a corner or feeds all to one side without, start talking on the phone and don't pay attention. I'm not saying it can't be done,
mm-hmm.
but from wet crop or heavy crop or that kind of thing. I tell people all the time, the tail baler will pretty much bale anything you want to put in front of it. You just got to be able to tell it how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The glory in the tail baler is you can adjust the pressure from the monitor. So if you're in a long, steamy crop and the baler's having trouble starting to bale, so you can dial down the core pressure to allow it to form the core easier. You can actually change the core size from the monitor if you want it to stay at that lower pressure for a longer period of time until you get it rotating better. The centrifugal force of the bale turning in the chamber actually helps the crop come in. So after you get that bale started, then you can transfer up to a higher pressure and still make a good, hard, tight bale. And all that can be controlled from the monitor. You can dial up the outside pressure to pack it tight. You can dial down the inside pressure or the core pressure. You can change all those core sizes and that kind of thing. It sounds complicated, but it just takes a little experience. It takes a little time to be able to look at the crop and kind of decide, okay, need a little bit lower pressure, or you need a little higher pressure here. But once you get the hang of it, once you've run it a little while, it's very easy to do. And I tell guys that are new to the baler, that are just starting to run the baler, if you start it off at a low pressure, it's never going to make just a terrible looking bale. Start it off at a low pressure and then start easing it up little by little until you get it to where you want. And before long, after you've done that after you've baled a few bales doing that, you get really good at being able to just kind of walk into a field and looking at it and saying, okay, I'm going to start right here. And then you might dial it up a point or dial it down a point, depending on what the crop is. But you have the ability to do all that from the monitor just by clicking a few buttons. The other great thing is if you make a mistake and you don't necessarily have it set right, you clog it up, you hit a button on the monitor and hit your hydraulics and drop the floor, clear the slugs, and keep on going. I tell everybody one of the great things of the drop floor is that you can keep going faster and faster and faster until you meet the limits of the baler. Whereas when I was a kid, you didn't push your limits because you didn't want to get out and have to dig out that pickup. So you got to a point where you were happy with it, and you left it because you didn't want to have to jam it and have to get out and dig it out by hand. Now you can push it to this absolute limit. Once you do jam it, you can clear it and then just stay a little bit below that, and you're good. So it's one of those situations where technology has made it a lot easier on the farmer.
That's a really good demonstration of thinking different. I think most everybody that's ever run a baler has plugged one, and whether it's a small square baler, a big baler, round baler of any kind.
The reason my elbows hurt like they do is from digging out all those balers when I was a teenager.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.